Cousin Judy got ambushed today.
She did.
They sprung this on me.
We did.
No better time to talk about travel in America than when you were with Cousin Judy. Let's roll.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey listeners, ever wonder what it would be like to blow up your comfort zone at the tender age of 50? Well, we did just that. When our last kid went off to college, we hit the road in search of a new hometown. Now we bounce from city to city and bring you along for the ride. This is the Skip Town All-Stars podcast.
Welcome back, All-Stars, to another episode. We are very excited about this one. We have a special guest today. It is none other than our Cousin Judy. We've come to know her well, and you are about to get to know her even better as well. Why don't you do the honors in introducing Cousin Judy?
Judy has been a travel, I hate to say agent because that seems so archaic. What is the new PC term for what you do?
I've always considered myself as a travel advisor.
That is perfect because that's really what you do. Judy doesn't just book tickets or hotel rooms for people. She's actually a person that creates an experience. So if you want to go somewhere, I tell everybody, oh, you've got to find someone like my cousin Judy. Not only does she create an experience for you outside the United States, but she also can tell you where to go in the United States. And she has traveled so much herself. So we're going to stick just to the continental US and just kind of pick her brain about like what to do, where to go. But the first thing I'm going to ask is, what was your very first travel experience? Like, how old were you when you left your home and experienced something different?
From the time I was about 9 years old, my father would wake us up at 3:30, 4 a.m., say, get ready, the car's packed. We're headed to Santa Fe and Taos, or we're headed to Colorado, or we're headed to California.
From where? Where did you live?
From Texas. We lived in a close suburb of Dallas. It was every August on the dot. First couple of weeks of August, he'd pack up the car, get ready and go. And that's when I truly discovered the vastness of this country.
So what was your very first trip? Was it Santa Fe?
No, actually it was California because my father's brother had died very young. So my father wanted to visit his gravesite.
Oh,
okay.
So off we went, and that was the San Joaquin Valley. Even at my very young age, I got exposed to visiting vineyards. We even went to see a couple of vineyards. And of course, back then, you're talking, late 50s, early 60s. It's certainly not the Napa and Sonoma that you know
right.
these days. And then we went up to San Francisco, to the Muir Woods, to the Redwood Forest. And it was really a very eye-opening experience. And we ended up actually, one of the last stops was Salt Lake City. And we got there when there was a Mormon dance convention going on in our hotel, which was also a convention center.
But
yes.
Back then, I mean, really, Salt Lake probably was just Mormon. Now it is more integrated because of the college and how many students come in from other states. But in the 50s or 60s, when you went,
it was strictly Mormon. Yes.
Oh wow!
And
okay.
it was very interesting to meet people outside the hotel, even. But to be there watching this. What was going on at this dance convention with all these young Mormons. It was.
How was the dance? Really... Did they leave room for Jesus in between them?
Well, I was watching from afar, and I was only, like I said, maybe 9 years old.
Yeah. Interesting to see, though. Okay,
so that was the very first one, yeah.
So then what led you later to want to make travel your career?
I did marry very young, and my husband was in the Air Force. Uh-huh. So he was stationed in Germany.
Oh.
So that was really an experience. That was truly just thrown into the middle of things because we didn't live on the base. We lived off base. So I had to deal with learning some German and learning how to go to the market, the Fleischmarket, the Bäckerei, and all of those different things.
How long were you there? How long were you stationed in Germany? What city?
We were north of Munich.
Okay.
In Augsburg. So we were there for about 2 years, close to 2 years.
Did you learn a lot of German?
Well, I did. But of course, that was a long time ago. So I can still get by. But that offered us the opportunity to travel around. So we made it to Belgium, we made it to France, we made it to Switzerland, and I learned to ski in Austria.
Wow.
Oh, what a beautiful place to learn to ski. Most of us don't know how to ski. And if we learn in Wisconsin, not Austria.
Yeah. And in fact, I learned at a beautiful place in Austria that's still to this day not very well known to people in the U.S. It's mostly, Germanic and Austrians and from the continent that go skiing there. It's called Kitzbühel.
Ooh.
And it's just this bucolic, beautiful place with mountain chalets and a beautiful little town center and thing,
Okay, so you heard that.
What's the name of that again?
Kitzbühel. It's Kitzbuel, Kitzbühel, Austria.
That's your insider tip.
Yeah.
Well, Judy has actually tons of them,
I
but
know.
that's just the one right off the top of the list.
Yeah. And then we moved to the United Kingdom.
Oh, we hear it
yeah,
sounds like a dog to our listeners. However,
it's not. It's a crane.
it's a crane.
Yeah, we're outside.
It's the resident crane in the pond
Yes.
behind the house. I guess we should explain to those who are not watching us on YouTube. We are actually recording on Cousin Judy's patio. Directly behind us, there's a well-stocked pond, which is why I think the crane likes to hang around.
Yes, and so does the alligator.
Yeah, and the alligator.
And we just heard a huge splash, so I looked at Judy, my eyes got very big.
The gator doesn't make that much noise.
Yeah.
He's very stealthy.
Okay, that's very scary. Okay. Okay, so where did you go after that?
To the United Kingdom.
Okay.
And we lived there for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So after that, we were separated. And so I had to start a new kind of path in my life. And I went to work for a wine distributor.
Mm.
So there were lots of trips out to Napa Valley and Sonoma. There were trips to France, to Italy, all sorts of places. And so that was wonderful during that time period.
Mhm.
But I realized after a while later on that I was still missing seeing a lot of the United States that I hadn't been to.
Right.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Let's just say a family of 5 in the United States, they want to go on a trip. What would you suggest? The ages are, I'm going to throw it out there. Oh, I don't know, 10 years old, 12 years old, 14.
Okay. Well, that depends on a lot, but the budget is a major concern, especially these days.
Okay,
Yeah.
Talk about that then.
the
Okay, so a
budget
family of 5 calls you.
So I asked them, what is their budgetary expectation? What do they think they have to spend or want to spend on this particular
okay,
trip?
they're going to be gone for a week.
And it also depends on the destination. Are they choosing a more expensive destination like Boston or maybe Washington, D.C.? They want all the kids to actually experience
The memorials and all that.
Well, and the memorials and to go to the Supreme Court, to go to, Congress, to see, everything there is to see. And then there are some fabulous, the Smithsonian.
Okay, let's just cut to it. We're not talking educational trip because my kids, if I took a 14, 12-year-old and 10-year-old Judy, they would have jumped out of the car if we were going to go to DC or Boston for an educational trip. Just a fun family vacation.
A lot of kids of all ages would love the different parts of that. There's the Air and Space Museum.
Okay.
There's the Spy Museum, which all kids love.
Sure.
Okay.
So there are certain diversions
saying,
that they
like,
would really.
DC would be a good family trip for a
Yes,
family
it would.
of 5. Okay.
I think so. Absolutely. There's lots of festivals they have going on downtown every single weekend of the year, just about.
Mhm.
So no matter, when you chose, it's fairly easy to get around DC. It's only when you leave DC proper do you start to get into really bad traffic situations.
So you don't need a
Okay.
car in DC.
So you wouldn't necessarily need a car if you stayed right downtown, but there again you have to look at the expense part of it.
Is it
But-
expensive? Is DC like New York? New York is expensive for a family of 5.
So I would say choose a time when Congress is not in session.
And
Because
why?
Because there are no journalists around taking up hotel rooms. There
Oh.
are no dignitaries. There are no lobbyists. None of those are in town when Congress isn't in session. So there are a couple of hotels which I have booked for people in the past. And let's say that they went in June, or let's say they went in May when it was cherry blossom time and also Congress was still in session and there were lots of things going on, during that week, and a hotel room could be as much as $400 a night, maybe
That's a lot
five
for a
if
family
you
of
need.
5. Oh my
Yeah, it
gosh.
is.
But if you go at a different time, it could be as little as like $200 a night.
Almost half.
Right.
What are vacation trends in the United States? I mean, I always thought that a family of 5 they always request the beach. But clearly that's not the case. You saying here that DC is a great place to take kids, or even Boston. So what's popular right now? Do you know?
Well, I would say, for instance, like this Santa Fe and Taos area is very popular because they've got a lot of things that kids could enjoy. They have, if you're into climbing, there's lots of climbing. You can go out to the Davis Mountains. You can go out to the Pueblos. If you want, Santa Fe is like big for street performers. And I mean, not buskers who just sit on the corner, but actual putting together performances.
Right.
And it has great restaurants that are great for families. It has a couple of times a year, there's the big balloon festival.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's true. Uh-huh.
Exactly. And there are just lots of things to do out there. So that's been, I'd say that's kind of a trend. I'm seeing that people want to go to more than just one destination.
Oh.
So there have been a few companies, including Disney Travel Company, that put together packages to go to 3 or 4 different destinations in one trip.
Oh.
And it's a package that's already put together. All you have to do is get there.
Mhm.
And I've heard nothing but fabulous things
Like what
about
cities?
them.
Like what do they do? Give us an example.
For instance, one would include the Grand Canyon and Sedona.
Oh, wow. So they're not
Yes.
they're not Disney like Disney experiences per se. Just the company of Disney puts these on for families.
Right, but they do include a Disney type experience because they've got, these guides who are well versed in dealing in what to do to entertain anyone from a 6-year-old to a 15-year-old.
That's incredible, because I would have hearing that made me think like, oh, they do locations near a Disney, like near Florida.
No, doesn't even have anything. And
Oh,
they
that's
do
incredible.
one.
That's
yes.
so smart. They've thought of everything. I swear they have.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me change it up for a second because, I think a majority of the listeners of our podcast probably have had kids at some point, but maybe not necessarily so anymore. They've all flown the coop, or just, younger couples who are childless at the moment. What are some of the cities that you would recommend if they had 7 days and like $5,000?
Okay.
2 people, $5,000.
I could certainly easily do New Orleans.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay,
Yep.
So a couple could go to New Orleans for $5,000.
Right. Again, it's the timing of the trip.
Mhm.
Right.
You don't want to go during the wine and food festival.
Okay.
Definitely. And certainly not during, Mardi Gras
Mhm.
Right.
either. And you want to try to avoid any weekend where there's going to be a big game
Oh,
going
okay.
on.
LSU.
Yeah.
Mhm.
LSU often plays in the stadium.
Or the
there.
Saints, right?
Oh, the Saints.
Or
oh,
the
you're
Saints,
Right. Yeah,
either-
yeah.
But the Saints, maybe not even so much, but especially when it's college, it's overrun by
Yeah.
Okay.
frolicking college students.
Yeah, we caught a taste of that in Tuscaloosa, actually.
At Alabama.
We could not find a decent place to stay for that particular weekend. So.
Yeah. And if you had enough time, you could divert up just a couple hours away up to Natchez, Mississippi, which is a fabulous little town.
Is that right?
On the Mississippi River.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay.
Stay in an old plantation.
Okay.
Go down on the river walk and
How do you spell that, Natchez?
Natchez.
Wow. Okay. There you go.
Okay.
There's a.
So Natchez, Natchez, Mississippi. And it's
How far is it from New Orleans?
about a couple of hours drive.
Okay. Okay.
So you could go up there for the night.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Make
Yeah.
it. You could even go up there, leave early in the morning one morning, and get up there to spend most of that day, part of the next day, and drive back straight to the airport. So
Oh, that's a
you wouldn't
great
have to
idea.
check out of your hotel and then check back into the hotel. But
So
also,
interesting.
there are a couple of museums that are right downtown in the French Quarter at Jackson Square. One is called the Cabildo, and it has pretty much the history of New France and
Oh.
New Orleans. And the other one next door to it is actually it's turned into actually a hurricane museum.
Oh,
It shows, I mean, everything. They do have one section in the Cabildo as well that's just about Mardi Gras.
Okay.
So you can see the costumes
Uh-huh.
up close.
I bet that's great.
From like the 20s on, and how elaborate they were.
And then how small they are now, and how it doesn't cover anything.
Well, I mean, back then they probably would be wearing like 25 pounds of beads and sequins and things like that, and headdresses and whatnot. So it's, there's a lot of interesting things other than just walking around with a hurricane in your plastic cup on Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. The food is spectacular.
Yes.
I mean, it's easy to get sort of funneled into
have to go
tourist
here, have to go-
areas
yeah.
or whatever. I have to do this, I have to
Yeah.
do that. But there's so many good restaurants there where you can get a great meal.
I don't know if you remember, but you had planned a trip for James and me and my girlfriend and her husband to New Orleans, and then the hurricane hit. We literally were going to be leaving like the day or 3 days after the hurricane hit. And I remember calling you and I said, do you think we're still going to be able to go?
What, Katrina?
Yes. And I go, do you still think? And she goes,
I don't
no.
remember
She's
that.
like, I'm canceling the hotel.
God.
And I was like, oh, okay. I thought maybe like we could still go in the French Quarter. And Judy was like, no, Denise, nope.
Yeah.
It's underwater still.
Yeah.
Bring a boat.
I know. I never made it. But so New Orleans, and tell one more city that you think you could do for $5,000.
Well, again, I'll mention Santa Fe because you can also include Albuquerque and Taos. Taos is only about an hour drive from Santa Fe. There's also overlooked as horse country and bourbon country.
Okay, what's horse country? I don't even know what that is.
That's
Kentucky.
Lexington, Louisville,
Yeah.
that area, Fredericksburg.
Okay. And is that a destination?
Well, it certainly could be. I mean, for instance, for the kids would love to go to there's one place, one horse racing farm they have there, horse raising farm, I should say, but they raise racehorses, and they have a simulator. Where you could, they put you in a jockey outfit,
cool. Nice.
and they put you on the simulator.
But that would be more of a family trip. That wouldn't be for a couple.
No, it would be a couple's trip, because if you don't want to jump on that simulator or go pet a lot of horses, there's a wonderful bourbon trail.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Where
We're
you
talking
visit
about
the different distillers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I mean, there are companies that actually offer that as a packaged program trip.
Is it just out of Louisville?
For the most part, it'll start in Louisville, but you don't have to necessarily, if you don't want to go to Louisville, you don't, you don't have to.
I would never have thought of that for a trip. Like if I were to call you and you were to say to me, oh, why don't we do a horse trail?
Yeah,
is that what you called it?
Yeah,
I never even thought of that.
It's a beautiful country, and there's a lot of history there as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned beach vacation earlier, and I would, in the past, I've often tried to steer people to beaches that were not nearly as in the know or whatever.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so for couples or
family, either one.
Okay, let's start with couples.
Yeah,
okay, so that's now Destin and that particular coast over there in the north, up near Pensacola Beach, Destin, Navarre Beach, Fort Walton Beach. That's become just really, truly overrun.
It is.
But if you go at a little bit of off time, okay, kids are back in school, go the 1st of October, hurricane season is over.
Right.
You've got, I'm not saying you have the place to yourself, but you can at least relax without running into people every 2 inches on the sidewalks.
Right.
And also just down the beach from there are some great places, unless you're one of those people who has to, if you're not into like, I have to have a museum to go to, or I have something to do every day, then down the road is Panama City Beach and Mexico Beach and Apalachicola, which is a great little town, a great little oyster catching town.
No, we were in that area too. We missed it.
Right across from there, right across the bridge is St. George Island, which is one of the most fabulous shelling beaches there is.
Oh, wow.
Really?
And it's all that area is very much less expensive than going to Naples, Fort Myers Beach, Fort Lauderdale,
Yeah.
Now Miami Beach is a whole other animal, but
Right, for sure.
A whole different destination. Or even over to Orange Beach in Alabama.
Yeah.
right outside, just south of Mobile.
Really?
Yes.
Never
it's
even heard of it.
Beautiful, beautiful beaches. Lots of different condos you can rent right on the beach.
When did that become a place to visit?
Well, I think it's always been by people who live, in the South, let's say Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe even North and South Carolina. And in the panhandle of Florida, certainly, because let's say, for instance, from Jacksonville, from my house to Orange Beach would be about, 5-hour drive.
Okay.
Maybe not quite a 5-hour drive, 4.5. And also you can fly into Mobile, which is not like having to fly into Lexington or into Montpelier, Vermont or something. You can get a direct nonstop flight there from certainly lots of different places into Mobile. And it's very close to Mobile.
Huh.
And if you want something to do, you can go into Mobile, in the daytime. There's a huge battleship that's docked there.
Oh, okay.
And so if you're looking for, something interesting to do, there's the Bellingrath Gardens, which are absolutely fabulously well done gardens to wander through. So there are other things to do. There's great fishing. If you're into like a deep sea fishing experience, you can go out, fishing in the Gulf.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
And the beaches
never
are
heard
beautiful.
Of Alabama could be in a destination for the beach. That's incredible. That's incredible.
For people who are budget conscious, I'm sure it's got to be less expensive than Panama City and stuff.
Right. Well, Panama City's, it's not too bad compared to that Destin, Fort Walton Beach area now.
Right.
Because they've built communities there now, and so the property prices have gone skyrocketing, and so therefore all of the if you're into VRBO or Airbnb, they're going to be more expensive there too.
Yeah.
So if you live somewhere like in the Dakotas, let's say, or even like Iowa, or let's head this way, like Utah, and you want to go to the beach, would you then recommend like California, or would you still recommend maybe like a Texas beach, or would you recommend Alabama?
I think, it depends on what they're looking for. I mean, as far as if they're expecting some lovely white sand beaches, I'm not sure I would necessarily recommend Texas, because their beaches are more of the Mexico beaches kind of. They're a little browner sand, and there's not quite as much to do down around there. It's mostly a Texas and Oklahoma people destination to go down to that area.
Okay.
But they're like, where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
The beaches are beautiful
Jacksonville
here.
Beach.
Right.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
At St. Augustine, and they have I'm not sure, I don't think that we drove all the way out to St. Augustine Beach when you were here last time. But if you go across the Bridge of Lions and go a little further out there, it's just nothing but beautiful, beautiful beaches. Beaches you can ride horses on, beaches you can drive your Jeep on. I even went to a Jeep show out there, and I was scared to death to pull my SUV out there on the beach. They said, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And it was. But
that's funny.
Dune buggies. It's kind of Dune Buggy Central out there. At one of the areas of the beach. And there's some really nice resorts, and they're very inexpensive resorts.
Okay.
There's an Embassy Suites it's right on the beach. And yet next to it, they have built like a sort of a little mini carnival place for kids if you bring your kids. So there's a Ferris wheel.
This is all near St. Augustine?
This is all in St. Augustine, actually. St. Augustine Beach.
Which is in Florida.
Right. You don't have to sell me. I mean, I love St. Augustine. It is such a cool little town.
Yeah. So it's great to go in for the day.
Yeah.
Because from downtown St. Augustine, you're looking at probably 20 minutes to get out there to the actual big stretch of beach. And there's everything from cute little clapboard houses you can rent to, really nice resorts.
As far as American towns go, it's the original gangster. Everybody thinks it's Jamestown, but it's not. It's St. Augustine. It's the oldest city in the United States.
It's been proven.
Yes, and you should definitely check it out. It's a killer town. I want to ask you, because you and I were talking earlier off camera, let's talk about the Carolinas for a minute. You rattled off like 3 Carolinas and like parts of Georgia. You rattled off like 5 or 6 locations that are worth checking out.
I think Greenville, South Carolina, has definitely become a really, really fun major destination.
Okay.
There's lots to do. They have a beautiful walkable downtown with a park built right in the middle of town with its own hiking trails
Oh,
and
wow.
fountains and everything. It's a big foodie destination now.
Okay.
And you can always go out to the BMW Museum, which is a heck of a lot.
Hell yeah. Heck yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's also the home of Michelin tires.
Oh, Michelin tires.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they even have a museum.
Oh,
If
makes
anybody
sense.
was interested in going to a tire museum.
Right,
you
right.
know.
The very first tire in 1919
Yeah.
or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it would be a long vacation unless
Right.
you're going to include another city with it, because you're up
Okay.
that far. You're probably only about a 4-hour drive up to Asheville.
Okay.
Oh,
So you could
Asheville's very
you
popular.
could easily, you couldn't really do Asheville in a day.
Mhm.
Right.
No.
But if you, for instance, started in Asheville and ended in Greenville, or vice versa, you could easily put those two towns together.
And you
of
could
course,
patch
Asheville
together a
has
week for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could. Of course, there's the Biltmore.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that
You
earlier.
know,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of little fun museums, and Asheville's also a big foodie town now.
Oh yeah.
Good to
Yeah,
know.
you
Okay,
could
I
do
have
that.
just a couple more questions.
Wow, go right ahead.
Okay,
You were you were asking her about a regional,
Georgia.
and then we got sidetracked.
Oh, yeah,
well,
no.
you mentioned Georgia.
I did.
too.
Yeah. Oh, you did. So you mentioned Augusta, not just
Augusta.
for us looking potentially for a residence, but
Well, it's a nice little town with one of those old rundown, become decrepit downtowns that they have begun to really revitalize.
Oh, okay.
With brew pubs and restaurants and
yeah.
boutiques and that kind of thing. And it sits right on the Savannah River. So if you want to rent a canoe, you can go down the Savannah River in a canoe with a lovely boardwalk and the other side of the river, the Savannah River, is actually Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Athens is sort of, if you're into antiquing, it is like the antique central of the South, just about.
Okay,
it's
the Mecca, got it.
Athens, yes, of Athens,
Athens
Georgia.
was so popular in like the 80s or
Yeah.
I
early
remember
90s.
REM, the band,
so
came
many
from
people
Athens.
like, I'm
yeah.
moving to Athens. I'm like, okay, go.
yeah.
and if you're going up, that way, and if you have the time, then there's a place called Helen, Georgia, which is it just drops you right in the middle of Germany.
Wow.
I mean, it's
Are you
basically all of the gabled, all of the restaurants and the buildings there and the chalets.
What's
are all,
the history there? Why is it?
It was just, about Fredericksburg, Texas, and how the Germans settled there.
Yeah.
So it's the
Settled,
same
yeah.
thing
Oh,
here. And they do
wow.
a huge Oktoberfest every year.
Oh my gosh, we
Without
should
having to go to Germany. You
That
can
sounds
you
fun.
can go and
To Helen,
experience
Georgia.
Yes, and experience Oktoberfest.
Oh my gosh.
That's very
That sounds
cool.
You know,
awesome.
That's
fly
like a-
into Atlanta, drive there, and
How did you find that place? Like, how did Helen, Georgia come up on your radar?
when Bill and I got married, he loved to travel by car,
Okay.
which I was very surprised at. So we did a ton of traveling by car.
Uh-huh.
Was this a
I
town
mean, we
you-
would even drive to Montreal
From Chicago.
from Chicago.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. So, or we would drive to, and then we would segue down into Vermont or even Boston, and we would drive to New Orleans.
Okay.
We would drive down into Florida. We drove to California once.
Wow.
From Chicago. All
Yeah.
of this is from your residence, which was in Chicago.
Right. So we try to take different routes.
Right.
That's
So this is one time we decided we could put in a couple extra days and segue off at a couple of towns in Georgia.
so you didn't know anything about Helen. You just knew it was a town in Georgia. Did you know when you stumbled upon
No,
it?
I looked at it. I mean, I had, researched. I'm like you. I don't just
Okay.
close my eyes
This
and
is-
point my finger up
This
to
is
the
when
map
you were
and
a
say-
pro. You were like, okay, like we can hit this spot on the way.
Well, I hadn't actually even at that point in time. I don't think I had actually even become a travel agent.
Oh, yeah?
I think I was still working for
Okay.
Oneida Silversmiths then,
Oh, yeah?
because I didn't actually become a travel agent until 1998,
Okay.
and so there was that 7-year gap there when Bill and I were married, because he was Mr. Mexico, so we always had to go to Mexico at least twice a year.
Not Mexico again.
So
Until I finally said, there are other things to do rather than lie on the beach and drink margaritas.
I remember we
And
talked
listen
about
to
this.
the-
You guys would always go to Acapulco, right?
The last time we went to Acapulco was our honeymoon.
Oh, okay.
We got away from Mexico. I got it narrowed down because he had he had basically about 5 weeks of vacation every year.
How nice.
Wow.
I mean, he got 3 weeks regular vacation, and then every time there was a holiday,
Yeah, he had it off. So he had a Monday off.
I'm gonna finish court early on Thursday, and I'm gonna cram everybody from Friday's docket into Thursday. So we've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Nice,
kind of thing. Or we'd tack it on to a week. So we did a lot of driving, and even after we moved here. He was always, Mr. New Orleans. He always wanted to stop in New Orleans because we'd drive home to my home in Texas.
Uh-huh.
And so either on the way up or on the way back, we'd veer off by 50, 60 miles, from I-10 and go to New Orleans. But New Orleans started becoming a city where it was almost too touristy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was just almost too touristy.
It felt like that when I was there in the 90s.
What year
and
did you
because
feel
of
that
Katrina, everybody we knew there had moved away.
Right.
They moved to Baton Rouge. They retired early and moved to Baton Rouge. They moved to Las Vegas. They moved to Philadelphia. They just moved.
Yeah.
And so we felt like we hardly knew anybody, anymore there. And there was a group with the Marine Corps that Bill was with there. And we would meet up with them and go to the Marine Corps birthday ball every year.
Oh, nice.
But they got disbanded after Katrina.
Yeah, because they're going to pick a
I
new place.
think it was only one more time. But in any case, so one day I had said when we were going up to Greenville to pick up my car, I said, we're going to swing by Charleston. And he fell in love with Charleston.
So going back really quick, when did you start to notice that New Orleans was becoming very touristy? What year would you say that was for you?
Well, it was so devastated after Katrina in 2005.
Yeah.
It really did not even come back to life for another couple of years at least.
Easily.
I mean, there were so many establishments that were permanently shut down then.
Right.
But this was an opportunity for companies to then come in and build condos and build more hotels and more hotels. I mean, a long time ago, well, even as far back as like 2002, 2004, 2005, there weren't all that many hotels there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right.
In fact, and then the casino came in, of course.
Okay, and this is after Katrina?
Yeah, just the one that's right downtown. I mean, it's right downtown off Canal. So that's a big draw. And then a Lowe's hotel went up, and then the JW Marriott went up, and then they started several small boutique hotels, which is great for the community, for the locals there in the community.
Yeah.
But it just became so crowded. Then
and it's a different feel.
And it is. It's a different feel because before it was the same old people that you knew for years and running the same places and that kind of thing. And now there's not a face that you recognize.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been there after Katrina, so I'm curious to see what it's like.
Oh, it's
sure
very
it's
much
way
changed.
Different. Yeah.
It's also right now at this point, it's not actually the safest city to travel to.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we skipped it.
That's why we avoided it.
And I sometimes have to give them, advice about where to go, what part not to go to. This is not a place you want to walk around at night.
Yeah.
This place is just fine, no problem. That kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would have to, I would always include that, in my advice to people who are traveling to certain destinations. And unfortunately, New Orleans, after they started their resurgence and after, probably 2009, 10, they went for a great while of being a pretty safe city.
Yeah.
And I guess because of all the new building and the new people who had come in and whatnot, but
that's odd. It just brought in a different element of people.
Yeah. So, I just would have to be honest and tell someone exactly, especially, if I've been to that place and I know the different areas very well.
Yeah.
It's just like somebody going to Istanbul, a couple of girls going to Istanbul and saying, well, I'm like, no, You do not walk after the sun sets. You do not walk anywhere by yourself.
Got it.
Right.
You know.
Makes sense. Okay, so
Nothing against Istanbul, by the way. I love Istanbul. It's a great destination. I guess I just used that as what popped into my head.
For sure.
There's certain areas.
That's a future episode.
Yeah.
Not to mention, there are just certain, let's be honest, not every place is safe. So we can't sugarcoat it and be like, oh, this is like, just some places you should not walk after the sun sets. It's really simple.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let's say New England area that's not Boston, destination for like, I'm the long weekend king. So let's say long weekend, a couple grand, a couple just wants to get away.
For the weekend?
He's a long weekend person. I'm not. So I've never understood it. And we always clash because he'll say, let's do a long weekend. And if I'm going to do a long weekend, my long weekend starts on Wednesday night and goes till Tuesday morning. That's my long weekend. And for him, it was always a midnight flight on Friday. So it was a red eye. And then it was
Monday morning early.
Yeah. And it was kick your ass Saturday and Sunday and then leave Monday at 6 a.m. So for me, that was never enjoyable. So I would let him do his stupid weekends.
Well, most of that's job driven in fairness. So it's like if I have Friday to Monday off and we have a chance to go somewhere and do something as opposed to doing nothing and sitting around on the couch in LA, I'd rather cram something in.
I pick nothing. To me, it's not enjoyable.
So much of it
with you, I could just turn on the television and watch some.
It's not enjoyable to wake up at 6 a.m. It's not enjoyable to be half tired and running through the streets of whatever. So for he and I, sometimes I would just say, go. Like you can go. I'm not, it's not enjoyable for me.
I mean, if the boss is calling on Monday morning, you got to be back at your desk. So that's just how it is.
I think it depends on the destination too.
Sure.
I certainly would have to leave out then Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard because
too expensive.
Not only that, I mean, depending though, again, on what time of year.
Right. After
all the summer people leave and you're going to go in October or even, up to mid-October and you don't mind having a sweater out on the beach and that kind of thing.
Right.
You could do that, but it's difficult to get to for a weekend. You'd spend half your time traveling.
Just traveling.
So those would be off the table.
Okay.
And unfortunately, most of the other places, it's the same situation for if you're just a weekender. Again, if you're located in Minneapolis or you're located in Detroit or you're located in Chicago, you could probably do it.
Right.
Fly into Boston, get your rental car and get the heck out of Dodge and drive up, to maybe Portsmouth.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, like, what if you live in like Eastern Pennsylvania and you just want a road trip for the weekend?
Well, you could certainly even drive over to Portsmouth from there.
Yeah.
And if you're living in that particular area, of course, or anywhere close, you could also go to the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. It's beautiful up there. There's even in the wintertime, there's even skiing up there. And it's again a lot less expensive destination than Vermont or Colorado, certainly.
Yeah.
The smaller places you intend to go, the longer time you need to program in for traveling to get there.
Right.
That's actually the problem.
Okay. Got it. And then my other question is, let's say we were looking to just hit the Midwest, somewhere in the Midwest, and like, sure, we could do a road trip for a week or what have you. Outside of Chicago, what would be some of your recommends for that whole region?
I loved Wisconsin. Yeah? I really loved Wisconsin.
Okay.
We'd go over there whenever we could.
Okay.
And it's from Chicago, or pretty much it was from Chicago, I believe, to get up to northern Wisconsin. It was maybe a 4-hour drive.
Okay.
Maybe
it's
4.5, something
sure.
like that. You could do that. But, the lakes are beautiful. You can go boating on the lakes. You can go to all these old supper clubs or, great, fabulous fish restaurants.
Oh.
This is in northern Wisconsin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of our listeners recommended Door County.
That's basically what I was talking about is Door County.
This place
up in that area.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And the drive up is pretty easy too, because there's a couple small places where you can stop on the way if you're doing a driving trip and even break it up and spend the night.
Wow, so you would recommend Door County,
There's
Wisconsin.
a little place called Two Rivers, actually.
Okay.
And it's where two rivers come together, and don't ask me, I can't remember which two rivers, but it's a great little town, fabulous little just stop overnight place there.
Oh,
to,
and
to
that's
get
in
up
Door
to-
County.
no, that's not. That's on the way. That would be between Milwaukee and about halfway between Milwaukee and Door County.
Got
Okay,
it. Two
great.
Rivers. It's a town.
Yeah.
It's so
Okay.
funny because I'd never heard of Door County
I know.
until like 2 months ago, and now I've heard it like 3 times. So,
Yeah.
I guess
And
it's-
then there's another place which is called Kohler, Wisconsin. Have you heard of that? Okay, going back to the Germans again.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Kohler was the one. You see it on half the toilets and sinks.
Yeah, that's
in the,
him.
St.
Yeah,
Kohler?
that's him.
Wow. Okay.
Well, they built this village and they brought all these German immigrants in and housed them in this village to build their factory there.
Wow.
Oh.
But it has now turned into a huge spa and resort. And a lot of the
What?
rooms have like rain showers and
well, they're all decked out in Kohler.
yeah. And but it's a very relaxed, atmosphere, and they have an award-winning dining room called the Immigrant Room.
Oh,
But
wow.
you can do every kind of spa treatment. Plus, they have their showrooms there,
Oh, I'm sure they're
which
fabulous.
you could
You're
you're
kidding?
like mouth dropping showrooms for all of their
Yeah, like $6,000 faucets
Yeah,
and stuff.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And they have a museum, and they have what's it called? Black Wolf Run, I believe, they've even put a golf course in there now.
Oh, wow.
But they have a couple of rustic lodge places where you can stay if you don't want to stay in the main.
So the
inn,
Germans have turned this
'cause it's-
into a destination spot of relaxation.
Well, I'm not saying the Germans did, but I guess they helped it along, so
Yeah.
so
for
to
sure. They
speak.
put it on the map, and then look what happened.
But it is
Wow.
definitely a destination in itself.
When?
And it's a great spa.
Is-
I went there a couple times. It's a fabulous
Highly
spa.
recommend.
Okay, really quick. When did it start coming up on your radar? When did you start hearing about it, seeing about it? How long ago?
Well, this is a friend of ours who was in the restaurant business in Chicago, opened his own restaurant. And of course, like 90% of the time, it didn't work out.
Sure.
So he went back to work and he got a job as the food and beverage manager at Kohler.
Okay.
So he said, you've got to come up and visit. And the town of Kohler itself is also very interesting. And it's got a beautiful lake there. You can go, it's big enough where you can go jet skiing on the lake. Even,
Nice.
because we were up there once at Christmas time. He talked me into getting on his jet ski thing on the frozen lake.
Get
I'm like,
oh, that's crazy.
On the frozen
Judy.
lake?
Oh my gosh,
That's
that's
awesome.
craziness.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy.
But that's how I got to know it. And so when people would ask me, well, where's a close place we could go weekend, for instance,
Right.
that would always come up.
Wow.
Okay.
That's kind of crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
really, you basically came across a little hidden gem from a
Right.
friend. Like that's
And
really
I'll
nice.
tell
I
you
love
another
hearing
place,
that.
even though it's out of the country, but
Uh-huh.
still very close, is Montreal, because it's very easy to fly into Montreal.
Yeah.
And you could spend all 3 days in Montreal. If you had 4, you could actually spend 2 days in Montreal, hop on a train, go the 2-hour train ride up to Quebec City, and really get French immersed.
Oh,
Wow. I'm
okay.
And
sure.
and then train back, get in a cab, go back to the airport, because Bill and I did that quite often.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a really
So-
fun 4 days.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
wow.
And it's still close enough. You feel like
Yeah.
you're in a foreign country, but you've just crossed the border a little bit.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
So you became a travel advisor around what year? How?
1998.
1998. For someone who wanted to do what you did so well and still are doing, although we're not advertising your services.
No,
She will
I'm
not-
retired.
She will not take your call.
She's pseudo retired,
Uh-huh.
only for her existing client base. If somebody wanted to get into this industry now with the changes you've seen, what would be your advice for them?
Well, I will have to say it's a pretty difficult industry these days, because so many, and even more so since COVID, of course,
Sure.
so many conglomerates have come in and bought up companies that a lot of times it ends up that you're no longer a travel advisor. You're pretty much just, booking things. For
So you're
people.
just like doing data entry basically,
right,
and putting in.
Exactly.
Got it.
And it does bother me too a lot that people will say, well, I'm not going to name the companies, but they'll say, well, I called up this company, and but can you tell me this or that, or I'll end up saying you can't stay there. It's like 45 minutes outside of town.
Because
Right.
they're just like anything.
They're
feel
order takers is basically
yes,
what
you just
they are.
took it out the words out of my mouth.
They just have a list of hotels and boom, boom, boom. They have a list of tour operators who offer daytime tours from that place. Boom, boom, boom. So that kind of thing. And
so you're competing the travel advisor that you are, the experience you provide, the travel experience you provide for people. You're literally competing with companies that are just taking calls in, looking at a board and saying, go here.
Yeah,
and
and people
there.
who haven't even had boots on the ground like you have.
Exactly. And that's the important part. I was very lucky because by the time I started in the travel business, I had traveled everywhere. I mean, I traveled to Europe. I traveled all over the United States. I traveled to Mexico, Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of hands-on experience, and I think that I would have to say to someone starting out, that's what you really need, because if you
It's true.
I don't even need a map of Paris in front of me to tell you exactly where to go.
Right.
That's
Right.
hard though. Like my friend just went on a honeymoon to Switzerland, and as she's going to the airport, I'm texting with her, and she said to me, "I'm so upset. I just found out the girl that booked my trip has never been to Switzerland." And I'm like,
that's
okay,
that's not surprising.
I was
at
like,
all.
that can't be uncommon, because
No.
who can afford a trip to Switzerland? You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah.
but it would be nice. Like, you want to hire somebody who's been there,
And
Ideally.
I will say the perks are still very good, but the commissions are, I mean, you couldn't, I'll just be quite honest, unless you did go to work for some big conglomerate, let's say like A&K, Abercrombie and Kent, or Tauk Tours, or Lindblad Expeditions, and even
Right.
they want some experience because they're they fit a particular niche.
Sure.
Then you're not going to get hired in a very good position to start out with. You're going to end up being a AAA order taker, or whatever.
Got it.
So
Mhm.
I hate to discourage anybody, and also because people are becoming more savvy, and people are booking their own BRBOs and their own. Not everybody wants to stay in a hotel, and I
Right.
understand that, or their Airbnbs, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. And they're going online and doing their own airline tickets, and I even try to guide them when they call me. I can give them to certain. Send them to certain sites that I know that offer really good tours.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of them that operate worldwide, and they're everything from private, very expensive,
Hmm.
to 12 people in the tour and very budget-minded.
Reasonable. Mhm.
Reasonable.
Very cool.
So it's not really necessarily not something I would tell anybody to get into an industry. I would tell
That's
them,
unfortunate.
I'm sorry, but
I get it. I know. I think anybody who's paying attention to travel knows that the landscape has changed, like even more so in the last couple years, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
So,
But however, we went through a period with the internet. I can book my own hotel. I can book my own airfare. And that went on for about a couple of years.
Mhm.
And then I found that all these people came back to me
Oh,
Yeah.
I would agree.
because they had no clue what they were doing. A friend that I play bridge with, and she and another couple, her husband had just had a knee replacement, so he was doing okay, but and the other couple that had a hip replacement,
Oh,
and he was still kind of on a cane, and they were going to go on a cruise, which would be great, because then you can decide if you want to get off, feel like it that day or not.
Mhm.
But they had booked 4 days in Amsterdam at an Airbnb. Somehow the little detail of it being on the 3rd floor with no elevator at their Airbnb got missed.
Oh,
No. How did they do it?
It was
brutal.
a struggle, she said, but
That's terrible.
Yeah. She and the other woman had to end up dragging the suitcases up and down by themselves,
Oh, my
of course.
Lord.
And see, then that takes away from me. I'm always about the experience, meaning like, I don't want my last memory to be that.
Yeah.
I want my last memory to be the restaurant I went to or the site I saw or
Right.
the people I met. But inevitably, when you go on a trip where like it was really difficult to get there, you had to wait a long time, the lodging was terrible, that's all you talk about.
Yeah.
And that's the worst.
Right.
yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this episode.
Okay.
You will be back, I hope, for many more because we have a lot of questions for you globally.
Okay.
And I'm just going to tease it right now. The next time you hear from Cousin Judy, we are going to be talking cruises. So that's it for this week, and we will see you soon. Take them out.
Empty nest, full tank.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.